Hi everyone, I'm Uche Eseonu and I'm a fourth seat trainee. My first seat was in finance and then I sat in intellectual property with Vanessa. I then went to litigation and dispute resolution and I'm currently in the corporate department. So today I will be interviewing Vanessa Marsland, an intellectual property partner. And Vanessa, I will give you a chance to introduce yourself also.
Thanks, Uche. So yes, I am Vanessa Marsland, and I joined the firm in 1982 as a recently qualified lawyer, became a partner in 1987, and I'm still here in 2021. I do intellectual property, both litigation and advisory work, and transactional, and yeah, I'm a mum with two daughters.
Thank you. So just as a general introductory question, I know you've given us a little bit of background of when you started, but could you give us some more information about your route into the partnership, into Clifford Chance, and generally into law?
Sure. So when I went to university, I knew exactly what I wanted to be. I wanted to do languages. But a year of French and Latin at Cambridge University knocked that out of me. It wasn't the course I was expecting to do. So I think I must have phoned home and spoken to my father, who was a lawyer, and said, "Oh, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, Dad." And he said, "Well, I've always thought you'd be a good lawyer because you're quite argumentative." So I didn't really think about it very much more than that. I just changed to law because you could do that at that stage at Cambridge at that time. And if I'm honest, law didn't really grab me when I was at university. It was only when I started actually doing initially in a vacation placement and then subsequently on my training contract, I found that the application of the law to real things was much more interesting. And I think that was partly because in my work experience when I was still at university, by accident, I found myself working on an intellectual property case, which involved the interesting topic of odor-destroying shoe insoles on one very hot summer, where I was involved in going around and getting evidence from people about their odor problems for their feet. And I just realized that it could be a lot more interesting than some of the subjects we were being taught in the lecture hall. And then again, I didn't really do a sort of proper training contract search. I was offered a training contract by the odor-destroying charcoal impregnated insoles firm and took it, and had quite a good time there, actually. And then after I'd qualified and I was doing a range of litigation work, including intellectual property litigation, one of the barristers I'd been working with mentioned to me that he knew a number of firms who were looking for young IP associates. And so I went along for, I think, 3 interviews and was quite surprised to learn that other firms seemed to be paying quite a bit more than I was being paid. So I went for the money. I think my starting salary at Clifford Turner, as it then was £3,600 as a one-year qualified associate. So that's my route to law.
Thank you for that. And I understand you were made up to partner at Clifford Chance in 1987. So how did you find the partnership selection process when you were going through it?
Well, I wasn't really aware of one. It was all a bit of a surprise to me, really. A much bigger thing was going on in 1987, which was the merger between Clifford Turner and Clifford Chance. So I'm one of the cohort of partners who was made up as the early Clifford Chance partners. We were made up on the day that Clifford Chance began to be the firm. So my heritage is Clifford Turner, but my partnership time has been at Clifford Chance. And I remember vividly my first interview with the senior partner on the day that I became a partner, because I went in quite impressed to meet him, and he said to me first thing, "Well, what do you think about my merger?" So we talked about his merger, and then I think as I left, he handed me a black book, which was the partnership agreement, which probably one day I'll read. And that was it, really. There was no partnership program, nothing like that. I was only 30 when I was made up, which was young at the time, but not extraordinarily young.
And have you ever felt any particular challenges in your career as a female lawyer / partner? And if so, how do you feel like you overcame those?
Well, when I joined Clifford Turner, as it then was, I mean, there were women lawyers, there's no doubt about it, but there weren't very many women partners. I think there were only a couple. And as far as I can recollect, I don't think any of them had children at Clifford Turner. I think it was slightly different in Clifford Chance. And it was definitely, early 80s was a time when assumptions were made about women, even by people who you might say could have known better. In fact, the first female senior partner at another law firm, Simmons and Simmons, told me, and I don't know if this is apocryphal, but she told me that when she arrived, the toilets for the men were called partners and the toilets for the women were called secretaries.
Wow.
So you tended to well, my reaction to that was to dress very proper, even pinstripe suits, and it was the fashion to have Princess Diana pie crust shirts at the time, so that you could look really proper and nobody could think that you were, not doing the right thing. So you did feel as though you were carrying, you were going to be noticed, and if you made a mistake, it might have implications not just for you but for other women. So that was a challenge. I remember in the early 2000s a partners meeting where, for the first time, as far as I was aware, diversity was on the agenda, but you could say amusingly or infuriatingly, it was all white men of a certain age talking to the partnership about diversity, which I felt uncomfortable. But now I think actually that was just another step down the road towards realizing diversity is everybody's issue. It's not just for the diverse people to sort themselves out. So in that sense, I think we're coming a long way.
And since you joined the firm, how have you noticed the firm change?
Well, in so many ways, it's got so much bigger. Technology's changed completely. I mean, when I joined the firm, you had one line of memory on your electric typewriter, and if you clicked onto the next line, you lost all the memory. And otherwise, you'd send things internationally by telex. So things were very different. But in some ways, the cultures. I'm happy to say that the culture has continued. I remember one young trainee in the intellectual property department in the 1980s, who you may know, he was a blonde, curly-haired boy from Yorkshire. His name was Matthew Layton, and I think Matthew sort of carried a lot of the culture of the firm with him. And another young man from Amsterdam called Jeroen, who came to sit with us for a few months when he was in training. And I feel very proud to have, been with those leaders of the firm in early stages of their career and just seen how they grew and developed the culture.
And what advice would you give to more junior women at Clifford Chance and just more generally in the legal industry at the moment?
I don't know how much I can speak for the legal industry generally, but at Clifford Chance, I mean, I think grab the opportunities. The doors are wide open. It's just got. I'm not saying that there are no issues, because clearly there still are issues with the percentage of partners who are women in the firm, but that is really changing. So yeah, I think we're very positive about it. I'm also very thoughtful these days. When I had my children in the late 80s, early 90s, my husband had a big job too. And I certainly felt that it was kind of my responsibility to make everything work for the children. I'm not saying he was a bad father, he was a very good father. But, I think today in many couples, the men may want to feel more involved than my husband did. And so the challenges that I had to face as a mum and a young partner, are different from the ones that people have to face today. And I think men probably face many of those challenges as well if they want to be involved parents with their children. So I'm really interested in parental leave and looking at how people in their 30s and 40s are working on their work-life balance to enable them to have whatever life they want to have outside Clifford Chance as well as in Clifford Chance.
And I know you kind of mentioned that you feel like there's been quite a lot of change just generally in society and in the legal profession since you started, but where do you think we are in terms of gender equality in the legal profession now?
certainly far ahead of the start of my career. But we're not, it's still an issue in the profession and still needs people to work on it. But I'm very optimistic by the number of young women lawyers and not so young women lawyers I see around me who are very willing to call it out in a positive and constructive way, and not just perhaps as I felt more I had to do, just to sit there and think, don't really agree with that, but not really have the courage or the words to speak about it.
And in terms of men acting as allies within the legal industry, how do you think that our male colleagues can play a role as champions for change?
Well, I hope that many of them will want to, for many reasons. I mean, one of them is, as parents or prospective future parents themselves, they may feel that it's in their own interest to champion change, to enable them to have a slightly different life from some of the older male partners. And just because society is very different now, and the idea of the boys' club is much less prevalent. So yes, I think they can by feeling that the club's got bigger and more interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for all of your answers. It's so incredibly interesting to be able to hear from you as someone who's been in the firm for less than 2 years. Because I feel like even since I've joined the firm, I've noticed changes within the firm. So I imagine that is just that times 1,000 for you. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer. And that's been really interesting. I hope everyone watching has also found this equally as interesting. So thank you.
Thank you. And I wouldn't have stuck around if I didn't felt that the place had something going for it. I really like the firm and so many of the people who work in it. Thank you.